If the human species is to continue, and if it's not reproductive any longer, how is it going to continue? Well, I'm really nobody special, Dave. I'm just a person who started, looking around and seeing things that didn't make a lot of sense and social trends that seemed kind of ridiculous. You ask people around you, you say, do you notice all the zombies in our society? And they'll all say yes. And everybody notices people who seem, dumbed down, but they're never going to admit that they are also dumbed down. So we can't see things in ourselves, and yet we are so open and ripe to be programmed, even though we deny that we're being programmed. So that's kind of what fascinated me, and I was looking into what people call conspiracies. I became this big conspiracy theorist. It started with 9/11, and then I went into chemtrails, and then I learned a little bit about vaccines, and I made a link in my mind very early on, and compared to other people in this alternative truth-seeking world, that the materials being introduced into our bodies by way of some of the content of chemtrails, these fibers that were not natural, they were man-made, and they were taking up residence in our tissues, and they were self-replicating. These were actually the components of transhumanism, altering us permanently, altering our cellular structure, our tissues. And when I figured that out, it was in 2009. I had watched a film called The Age of Transitions, and that was about artificial intelligence, and it featured some of these futurists who claim that man will be married with machines by 2045. It's called the Singularity, and Ray Kurzweil is like he's like the granddaddy of the futurists, the visionary. And when I watched that film, The Age of Transitions, I said, oh my God, the way to this, in the body's own structure, is this chemtrail fallout. That's what they're doing. They're embedding us. So no one was talking about that. I barely knew what I was talking about myself. I just knew this was it. I had found something. It is apparent that the human species and all life forms are being interfered with on the structural level. We are being changed through vaccines. Vaccines are injected into our body, and they corrupt the immune system. We have an immune system that is over-triggered. The humoral immune system, the Th2, is extremely messed up by materials in vaccines, which should not be put into the bloodstream directly. That's one reason why we're being changed. And then we have GMOs in our foods. That's changing us. We have materials in the chemtrails that are now being absorbed into us, and they have properties that are absolutely not natural. Our cells have properties that are cross-domain from different life kingdoms all mixed in together. We are of the eukaryotic life kingdom, and that's what we're supposed to be, but we're no longer defined, restricted as eukaryotes. We have archaea properties in us. It's called cross-domain bacteria. You can look on the Clifford Carnicom website, carnicominstitute.org, and read all his papers. He's been showing this since, 2005. So that's how we're being re-engineered. That's like the level at which it's happening. It's on our cellular level. And we have radiation around us. We're in a bath of frequencies that are unnatural, that are not easily tolerated, not tolerated at all, in fact, by tissues. Our tissues and cells are used to frequencies that range from 0 to 40 hertz cycles per second, and that's the natural, you could call it, electromagnetic field of the Earth. It's called the Schumann resonances, and everything in us has adapted to those frequencies, and the average range is 7 to 12 hertz. So your brain is a 7 hertz system, and when you put a cell phone to your head and it's belting out frequencies at 1.2 billion hertz, and you've got Wi-Fi on your desk that your computer is transmitting and downloading at 2.4 billion cycles per second. All this is blasting into your body, and it's shattering your cell membranes and destroying your tissues on a permanent basis. These phthalates, these feminizing chemicals, these estrogen mimickers, I mean, everything is an assault on the body altogether. Altogether it's a huge barrage, a bombarding. All these things are causing chaos in the human body. And disrupting means the natural orders are breaking down, and the body is going to have to try to do something, try to adapt, try to adjust. That's what living organisms do. They have an impulse in them. If they can't rid themselves of something, a stressor, they will try to deal with it, adapt to it. First of all, we've seen an explosion of what we are told are gay men. We're told that, men are, this is how people are. There's just this tremendous closeted population that's now coming out of the closet. I don't think these are gay men per se. I think they are feminized men, and it's been happening. It starts prenatally. It starts in the womb. We have an enormous number of chemicals that are in our lives. They're in a lot of products we use every day, and they are from the plastics family. There's bisphenol A, which is a rigidifier added to polymers to make a hard plastic. And then there's a whole family called phthalates that are softeners. So when you use a shampoo, for instance, that makes your hair shiny, it's actually got a plasticizer in it. And plastics also carry aromas, these phthalates. So a lot of the artificial scents in our personal care products are held by phthalates. We're getting exposed to a huge number of molecules that don't exist in natural things, and our body is set up to receive molecules that are natural. And so when there are similarities in construction between unnatural molecules and natural molecules, and those unnatural molecules drift into the system, the bloodstream, the cell receptors that are looking for and attuned to a certain shape of molecule can grab those unnatural molecules and think that it's what they are normally looking for. So just to give you an example, the bisphenol A molecule is like a stretched out horseshoe. And that's how estrogen is. So when children are being formed in the womb, all embryos start as female, even if they've been conceived and penetrated by a Y chromosome sperm. The first 6 weeks of pregnancy, they all look and seem to be female. It's in the 7th week of pregnancy that the job of the Y chromosome is to start forging the little male out of that initial female form. So if you have too much prenatal estrogen, even if it's a chemical estrogen mimicker, the testosterone is going to be blocked. The matrix in the womb is not correct, and it has to be correct to make a proper baby. So if it's too dominated by estrogen, even if it's a chemical kind of an estrogen, even if it's a fake estrogen, the body is reading this as estrogen, so the testosterone cannot do its work. So the men that are coming out now, for already a couple of decades, we've had a very high rate of miscarriage of male babies, which is the body saying, this is not working, I can't do this. And we've also had a high rate of hermaphrodite babies, which are, of course, babies with genitals of both sexes. So they're not being properly differentiated into males. And this is my personal theory. I'm not a scientist. I could be dead wrong. We've got this tremendous boom in these very effeminate men that we are told are gay, and many of them assume they're gay, but I don't know if they're gay or not gay or what they really are. But they're, to me, the natural thought is these are incomplete males. They don't have a male brain. That's one of the jobs of the Y chromosome. They're too much on the female side of the spectrum still, because the environment in the womb The prenatal estrogen, even if it was chemical estrogen, was not normal.
Where's the proof to back all this up? I ask myself. Okay, so if I look at popular culture, you know they've been pushing this metro cross dressing heterosexual man for, well, ever since the 80s really, even before that. But if I look on, call me a conspiracy theorist, but is Michelle Obama looks very male as an example. Lots of rumors about Barack Obama being homosexual, and then you have this big story about this athlete Bruce Jenner, who was, in your words, I think, regarded to be Superman, and now he wants to be called, what's his name now?
Caitlyn.
Caitlyn. So is, with Bruce Jenner, there's this big reality TV show, isn't there? What's that called?
Keeping Up with the Kardashians.
The Kardashians. So clearly, this whole story has gone out to millions of people, not only in America but around the world. So it's influencing kids from Singapore to Europe. We have it here on various channels. But can you just talk about Bruce Jenner and your understanding of the background and how this kind of fits into the social modeling that's taking place at the moment?
Well, you could say that Bruce Jenner is a social model for this because he started out as an Olympic gold medal winner. He was a decathlon champion. So in many ways, the decathlete is like the king of athletes. He's won a medal and he can do 10 things this well, So Bruce Jenner, his story is kind of like a cartoon. I don't know how real it is, but the way we've been given the story is that this 1976 gold medal winner in the decathlon, Bruce Jenner, who was gorgeous and, rippling muscles and flying off cereal boxes for years for the American children who were looking at his picture as they ate breakfast. So that's kind of like a Superman. Superman chooses later in life to become a girl. Now that is a cartoon. That is kind of like a fairy tale. And that's a formulaic story. So if Superman can do it, then anybody in between can do it too. If it's normal for Superman to become a girl, then anyone can do it.
Well, that's right. Can I just interject something? Growing up as a kid, we have all these stories about the prince and the princess, and they meet, they fall in love, and live happily ever after. And you get to the wedding, and that's the end of the story. And the assumption is that life is perfect after that. So are you saying that they're using different forms of media to tell a different story?
They're using media to make a trend and to normalize something that's actually very unusual. The transgender population is about 1 to 1.5% of the population at large. And to put this kind of spotlight on Bruce Jenner, and then, on my blog, so aboutthesky.com/Smallstorm blog, there's also a menu tab, Smallstorm blog. I've now put a few posts up that show the prominence of this new kind of human. There's a woman, Daniela Two Spirits, that I've put a post about, and I watched this on a television program called Botched here. And Daniela Two Spirits started out a boy, but she doesn't say that. She said, I was born a baby, but socialized male. You see, you can't say I was a boy, ever. I was born a baby, but I was socialized male. When I was 15, I began a gender transition to female. So this person received breast implants at 21, and then, at 23, I was going through a midlife crisis. Wait a minute, I thought midlife was like 40, 50 years old, not 23. This particular individual removed his breast implants and went into another tailspin. and decided, I am not a woman, I am not a man, I am a human. You see, this is the real crux of it, the gender blurring. In fact, Daniela Two Spirits calls herself a gender bender bot, as in robot. I am a gender bender bot. I have the video up on my webpage. I have accepted in my mind that I am two-spirited and I want a body to match it. I want to be able to express male one day and female the next day. The nuclear family has been eroded. Divorce is doing that, and all kinds of forces. The bashing of males in television movies and the movies in general. But the modeling, this is all part of the social engineering, is that men are stupid and they're bumbling fools, and particularly white men. And women have been taught to be very angry at men, find fault with men as much as you can. And men are frightened to do anything because they're not going to do it right. It's somebody's going to complain about them, whatever they do. They're not in the caretaker, breadwinner position anymore. So many households are single households now. And anyway, so when you look at the chemical level, when you look at the radiation level, wireless radiation is radiation. There are no two ways about it. Wireless radiation sterilizes people, particularly the children now. There's Wi-Fi in all the schools, and the children they have a very high water content in their bodies, and they're holding these iPads to their stomachs, and their eggs are being irradiated, and their testicles, and so there's a drop in fertility. We're already seeing it. I mean, I already know people who are infertility specialists because infertility has been an issue already for 30 years at least. So now it's going to be a bigger issue. And as these phthalates create these men, the sperm count of men, there is a video on my webpage. It's called The Disappearing Male. You actually have to click for it there's a link there, though. So watch The Disappearing Male. That was a show made for television in Canada in the 90s. Excellent program. And talks about the phthalates and the feminization of all species, not just men. There's so much plastic in the ocean that the ocean species and the marine chain, they're all being feminized. And so the chemical properties of plastics and the irradiation by wireless signals are going to make us unable to reproduce successfully someday. Our rate of reproduction is dropping, and it's going to drop more. So eventually, we aren't going to be able to have children. So if we want to reproduce at all, it's going to have to be done in a lab. The state is going to have to assist us, supervise. It's going to be too expensive for people to pay for personally. So all of this is moving reproduction out of humans themselves. So there's not going to be any need for the family. If the human species is to continue, and if it's not reproductive any longer, how is it going to continue?
Well, it's not, is it? I mean, to quote Kurzweil, or however you pronounce his name, the guy at Google, the future does not need us. I mean, Alex Jones, some people love him, some people hate him, but he quotes, which is kind of funny, about, I think, prawns, bisexual prawns. I don't know how you can talk about a fish being bisexual or something, but are you saying that this is across the globe for all animals?
Well, there are hermaphroditic features now in lots of species. That's what he means about bisexual. He's not talking about sexual preference. He's talking about the physical presence of reproductive organs of both species on one individual specimen. So as the genders are being blurred and mixed, the reproduction ability is going to vanish eventually. You're going to get a sterile form.
Okay, so when you're saying this to me, what comes up for me is over the last 12 months of research into conspiracies, one term is prominent. It's called eugenics, which you're very familiar with, I'm sure. Is this part of Planned Parenthood? Is this part of a larger Nazi, I would say, a Nazi eugenics plan to reduce the population of the planet, or would you not go there?
Well, eugenics, the new name for eugenics is transhumanism. That has been admitted. They changed the name. They
Okay.
call it transhumanism now. And population control is more like population redesign. That's what's happening. You're getting a redesigned human specimen. And it's as we move, this is all transitional, it doesn't happen overnight. So you're seeing more effeminate men now. Women are being masculinized. Um, and then as they approach one another, you're going to get what's called the neuter. There's a very famous paper called Postgenderism, Beyond the Gender Binary. And this was written several years ago, but it will tell you where all this is going. It's going toward humans who don't reproduce. The state will control reproduction. Humans will not be able to do it on their own.
Hang on, hang on. This all of a sudden has dropped into the sphere of Hollywood. I can see Keanu Reeves doing a double somersault, and we are in the Matrix, are we not?
Yeah, that's it, though. There's no real difference between what's in the movies and where we are all going to go. They're actually letting us know. And it is like sci-fi because it is. It's science being exploited to great extremes using unwitting participants in the general population, in the world.
So
I mean,
you're
the fish didn't ask to be hermaphroditic. They're laying the script out for us, and we're going to consider it impossible in entertainment while it's happening to us. The idea of putting it out there as science fiction means that they're going to make it harder for us to accept as reality because we've already seen it in a movie and it was just a movie. So it isn't happening in the real world. Don't worry about it. Everything is fine.
Saudi Arabia are bombing Yemen right now. Okay, so I'm speaking
Mm.
to my son, my 14-year-old boy, and I'm saying, Saudi Arabia bombing Yemen. And he said, Yemen, what's that? And I said, that's a country in the Middle East. He said, Dad, how do you spell it? So I spelt it to him. And he turned to me and said, Dad, you know, that country is the same country that I get to fight in Call of Duty, which is a PlayStation game, which came out 2 years ago. And so all of a sudden, 2 years later, we're actually in Yemen fighting. And I think it's part of this modeling that goes on in society, and they target the young people most definitely. And, they use icons in pop, in sports, and so on and so forth to influence the young. Would that be fair?
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, it seems tragic and horrible to us, but look at all those kids who grew up on those violent cartoons and they're not fazed by death. They've watched so many bloody movies with all kinds of killings and murders, and they're not even horrified by it. It's just normal and natural. So if they had a PlayStation game where they were in Yemen fighting in the game, then if we're really in Yemen fighting, oh, okay, yeah, that's normal.
Well, that's exactly right. And my son's called Jacob, nice kid, and he wants to be a pilot. And I said to him, well, son, by the time you're old enough to be a pilot, there won't be pilots, but you can be a drone operator.
That's right.
And that's kind of where it's going. And it's pretty scary. But what scares me the most is I have two beautiful children, and I know that you introduced me to something called Ken doll, And the fact, the fact that, and I'd like you to go into it, but I think my children are beautiful. They're stunning. They're stunning looking. They're lovely kids. They've got everything, and I just can't, being a dad, I can't love them enough. But of course, in today's society, the human being doesn't feel they are enough. And I just don't know, could you speak about this character, Ken doll?
Well, the Barbie doll was a toy made by Mattel for little girls, and her male partner who came along later was called Ken. And Barbie was criticized because she had a very narrow waist, big breasts. She was very shapely, but her waist was so absolutely skinny that she wasn't realistic. But it turned out, I actually bought a book about Barbie, the engineering of Barbie, and they said that they had to make a waist that small because when you put clothes on her, like skirts with a waistband and a snap, and you're using materials made for us, and when you double it over and sew it and put a snap on it, if they gave her a normal waist, she'd look huge in the midsection as a doll. So they had to give her this tiny little waist. Anyway, so the Ken doll is, also very lean so that he can wear his clothes, and he's very cut, and he has a certain, face. I mean, this is all plastic molding. But there are apparently people in the world, a couple in Brazil, and there's a guy from New York, who they want to be the human Ken doll. And they've had enormous numbers of surgeries. One guy had already 190 surgeries to transform himself into this very, pinched nose, sculpted cheeks. He's got the moosed hair of Ken. He wants to be the human Ken doll. There's almost like a vying for that particular label. I am the most Ken-like human being. And what amazes me is that the medical world is doing all this elective surgery for people, and the media is giving it plenty of attention. But yeah, I mean, there's a term in psychiatry called polysurgical addiction, and a lot of people warn that once you get on the road to plastic surgery, it's there's no end to it, because once you have one thing fixed, wrinkles taken out of here, you're going to notice wrinkles over there. So you're going to say, oh my God, those wrinkles really stand out. I've got to have those worked on. So this idea of altering yourself to erase the aging process, it starts even with makeup, with something as harmless as that, but you have to put a face on when you go out because your real face isn't good enough. So this human being seeking to radically alter themselves appears to be getting a lot of support and attention now. And it's all about feeling good. Oh, you're going to feel better about yourself. Oh, that's paramount, how you feel about yourself. They took out royalty and replaced it with celebrity, right? And we all wanted to be movie stars, beauties, fashion queens, and yet we were not. So we followed all these people. We became fans. We couldn't wait for the next picture, the next poster, the next event, the next film. When you separate people, when you create people who are in a spotlight and then they have people beneath them who are staring up at them in the spotlight, you're really creating an inferiority complex in the public mind, right? The photographic industry, along with the film industry, has been able to create apparitions that they then trot into our minds. And when you go to the movies and you sit and you see this screen and you see a face on the screen, I mean, that face is many times larger than life. And you get within what I call nose hair closeness. So you're developing an intimacy with this character on the screen and you're in a story, even though it's a fiction, but you think you're in their life. You think they are interacting with you. And they're on such a large physical scale. Imagine what that does to your perception, right? It's really affecting us psychologically. Everybody thinks they have fantasies of being with someone as gorgeous as Brad Pitt, or I mean, that's our standard now. We want to be like that. We want to be those people. We want to live in a mansion in Hollywood. Well, we're all going to be avatars. We're going to be forms of ourselves that stand in for us. But it's not going to be on a screen or somewhere in cyberspace. It's going to be in real life. We will have turned into these representations. I mean, Botox is botulism toxin. Do you know what botulism is?
No.
When canned food goes bad, if it hasn't been sterilized, I'm quoting something I learned, many, many years ago, that the growth in there is called botulism toxin. And I heard that a pound of botulism toxin can wipe out the entire world population. It's so toxic. That's what they're putting in. That's what Botox is. I don't know how they control it or what happens. I haven't researched it, but botulism toxin is what they inject into people's... It relaxes. It's a neurotoxin, so it relaxes the muscles in the face. And you get this relief from the wrinkled look for a little while, and then you have to have it done again. And I have on my blog, somebody sent me a video about something called Hugel Kultur. And you have to scroll a little bit down. There's 2 videos. Fascinating. You can build in your backyard a bed that will never need irrigation. All you do is put rotting logs at the bottom of it. Dig a deep hole. You fill it with old dead wood, and you then put layers of branches and leaves. You have to initially irrigate it. I'm very interested in this whole idea of the trophic chain. You are creating the the platform for decomposition of dead organic matter to take place. And the decomposers are at the very top of the trophic chain. The producers are at the bottom, and they use sunlight and carbon dioxide and sometimes oxygen to make their own food. They don't go and find food. So plants and algae are producers. And then we have consumers who come and eat those plants and that algae, and then we have other consumers that eat those consumers, and it keeps going, consumer, all the way up the chain. And then you'll have the apex consumers, sometimes called apex predators. And they'll eat the consumers, the biggest ones, underneath them. And then when they die, the decomposers set upon them. And the decomposers are fungi, bacteria, and they start breaking it all down. And they turn that big, huge apex, animal into nutrients for the whole thing to start all over. And so if you make a hugelkultur bed in your garden, stuff will grow out of it like nothing else. And it's practically free. I just was a regular person, really. I mean, I don't know. And the blog page is so new. I mean, the site has been up for a while, and it was really a chemtrail site, but then I started writing on this blog page, and I wanted to just put things there. I mean, I'm going to be doing a post on the maitake mushroom. My God, if you ever need something to eat that's going to make your body sing, eat the maitake mushroom. And they are decomposers. They grow on the roots of dying trees in the forest. But the cultured ones just fit in the palm of your hand, and it's the king of mushrooms. I'm definitely going to put a post up very soon on maitakes, and if there's any way for you to get one, do so. And
well, that would be my question. Where on earth would I buy, that kind of mushroom? Where? Online?
No, they are in a lot of shops, actually. I now know that they're in 3 or 4 grocery stores here. They're at farmers markets. They've become very popular. There is a capsule with dried maitake, Maitake, but it's also called hen of the woods. I mean, these mushrooms, people have known about them for a long time. They grow wild in North America, in Europe, and in maitake is the Japanese name. But they actually are more medicinal than shiitake, and the flavor is unbelievable. And you can saute it. You just chop it up fine. You put it in a pan, saute it, and what I do is I use it as a crumble or sprinkle on anything, except for sweet stuff, And you just eat like a teaspoon a day, and you can put it in the freezer, and you can break off bits of it and stick it in soup or whatever. But Maitake, I will be putting a post, probably even today, about the maitake mushroom, because since I've been eating it, I was turned on by a farmer's market mushroom vendor. I came by his booth. He says, "Try this." I said, "What is it?" And he said, "Just chop it up. Take it home, chop it up, and eat it." And oh my God, it changed my life. It's very anti-cancer. It has very powerful, powerful nutrients that are almost medicinal. I mean, they probably qualify as that. But the reason is it's a decomposer. It grafts onto the roots of trees, and it starts working all of that nutrient material, that fecund material, into itself. It starts feeding on that and turning that thing into new life for another generation of trophic chain. So what's happening to us is that, the trophic chain is in the ocean. There are different trophic chains depending on the environment. They are starting to assemble unnatural components and elements within them. For instance, plastic in the ocean. There's a film on my website, Inside the Garbage of the World. You have to scroll down, but you can find it on YouTube. I know the filmmaker, and I'm helping him with his next couple of films. And he put out a very convincing film on what is going on in the ocean. I mean, plastic is covering the ocean floor. What we know of in terms of the North Pacific and Atlantic gyres, those swirling masses of plastic trash, that's just some of it. The rest is already down on the ocean floor. And all these animals are consuming plastic because when plastic degrades, it breaks down, it starts to get into very small little flakes like dandruff. That is the exact color and size of zooplankton. Zooplankton are the animal form of plankton. Then you have phytoplankton, which is the algae plant form of plankton. They're true producers because they make food out of sunlight. Zooplankton eat phytoplankton, and then things eat zooplankton. Like the littlest fishies, they all eat the zooplankton, the baby fish, and many species feed on plankton. These plastic bits are exactly the same shape and color of zooplankton. So the little fishies swim in the water, and they open their mouths, and they gobble up loads and loads of plastic, thinking this is what they're supposed to eat. That's what I mean when I say biology is kind of blind. It's looking for what it's used to, and if something comes along and looks a lot like it, it's going to make an assumption. And this plastic cannot be digested, so it just fills up the guts of these small, tiny fish, and the bigger creatures are seizing onto floating plastic, stuff that's red and blue, and they think it's a fish, and they grab it, and they swallow it, and it's in their stomach already before they realize that, if they even do, that it's not. And they cannot expel this. It doesn't go through the digestive tract. So you're seeing birds wash up on shore, whales. There was a pilot whale, I think it was, with 400 pounds of plastic trash in it. Its stomach ruptured. And so on the very bottom of the trophic chain, plastic is ultimately a chemical. It's made of chemicals. So the trophic chain, in my view, is going to start integrating these chemicals. They're going to be fastened into the structure of life. So life is being chemicalized. Some of it will die, but some of it will say, hey, I've got to figure out how to use this.
When you say some of it will die in life. That's the same for us. Some of us will die during this period of great change, will we not?
Yes. Some of us are going to capsize and collapse. We just won't be able to take the mix of assaults. And others of us will, struggle to get through it, will lurch through it, and will emerge, victorious because we will have lived. And those will be the prototypes for humanity 2.0. Those will be the radiation tolerant, the chemical tolerant human specimens. So there's a self-selection going on. We are being observed as to how we combat and deal with these many different challenges, and it's all happening generationally, and the social aspects of it are also being observed, and successive generations are taking to them more easily than previous generations. So eventually there will be human beings that will be okay with all this, and they will be the preferred type and also the most responsive. That's ultimately what it boils down to. Well, paperclip was an importation of German scientists. I don't use the term Nazi because it's a loaded term, and people don't really understand what that means, in my opinion. There were scientists that came from Europe. The Frankfurt School was a bunch of Marxists who came from Europe and set up in America deliberately to change the culture here. So America has been a giant, giant experiment, and Europe has been pretty much decimated. Well, that's the wrong definition of decimated. Decimated means taking out 1 out of every 10, I learned. But I'm using it now conventionally. The soul of Europe has been flattened, really. Because we have to educate ourselves, and we have to find alternatives and ways to protect and shield and block and avoid. And then we have to teach our children, who don't spend every waking minute with us. I mean, they're all off with their friends, and they're in school, and they watch programs, and they get influenced. So you have to keep up with that somehow, and I don't know how people do it. I mean, it's bad enough having to do it for yourself, having to relearn absolutely everything and absolutely question medical advice that you get from professionals who are licensed, who've simply trained under, mind control, sleep deprivation, so they can revert to robotic memorization of textual material, who rely on machine diagnostics instead of making their own judgments, who don't spend enough time with you to make an evaluation, a personal evaluation of you. As I got older, I just changed my website, a place where I could bring people things that I had found had solved problems for me. So iodine solved a lot of issues for me, especially with regard to mood and energy. And, I think on the cellular level, it is able to address a lot of chronic issues. And, the older you get, you just start breaking down. You don't have the same resilience. You actually lose a lot of water, and you can see it. Old people are dried out. They're desiccated. This is why they wrinkle. And children are all chubby and fresh and plump, and it's because not only do they have fat, baby fat, but they have a lot of water content. And water is a conductor it's a facilitator of so many different biochemical exchanges and interactions. And there are minerals that are fundamental to biochemistry, and I've learned that iodine is one, and it's not expensive, which is why you never hear about it from doctors, because there's no money in iodine. And so iodine is one, magnesium is another. I found by pure luck a really amazing magnesium cream, and magnesium relaxes the tissues. So if you have chronic pain, like a stiff neck or joint pain, and you put magnesium on, those tissues start to not be so painful and constricted. Magnesium works in opposition to calcium, and we actually have too much calcium in our bodies. The ratio of magnesium to calcium should be even, and it's not. Magnesium dips, it gets low. So when you put magnesium on the skin, you can actually put it in areas where you have inflammation and pain, and it reduces all that. So calcium constricts and makes everything hard and tight and rigid and makes it hurt. Magnesium relaxes. So these simple things, and they're not expensive. And what else? I have cell phone shields. If you're going to be carrying a cell phone, you might as well put it in a shielding case. And these come in all different fabrics and patterns. G-seat to sit on at your desk or in your car really alters body pelvic position and takes a lot.
What is it? G-seat. What is it? What is it?
The G-seat was actually, I got to know the owners of the company. They're in Arizona, Gelco Products, and it was Kathleen, the woman, who was a telemarketer and had a gel pad for her wrist. You know how they were trying to make computer, the surface on which you had your keyboard and everything, much more ergonomically comfortable, because people were getting carpal tunnel syndrome. And she told me, she said, hey, one day I had the thought, I need butt gel. I've got to put something under my butt. So she started investigating bicycle seats design, and she created a cushion. It's not just a cushion. It's an ergonomically designed pad. It has a cutout in the tailbone area so you don't get any pressure or compaction. A lot of people who have discomfort sitting already have a tailbone that just is too painful to let anything touch. So the G-seat is wonderful. I've got 3 in my house. I have one in my desk. At my desk, I've got one in the car. I have another one that I shuttle around. But it changes how you sit, and over time, it engages all of those and strengthens those core muscles, iliopsoas, the muscles of the erector spine, and you end up sitting properly. Your chest lifts up, your diaphragm isn't all compacted, you have better breathing, better digestion, and you get stronger. You'll start walking differently. You'll start feeling different. So this is, one thing you can get, especially we in the alternative research world. We spend a lot of time at our desk. And we should know how to sit. We shouldn't sit slouched, and it's too difficult to remind yourself to sit up. It's easier to sit on something that puts you in a position where you are on your sit bones. You're sitting on your ischial tuberosities, not on your tailbone. And that immediately will start lifting you up. There are my websites, avatarproducts.com, and there's aboutthesky.com. Both of them have contact. The Avatar Products is support@avatarproducts.com. And then About the Sky has a contact page. I don't know why people... I guess you could contact to ask questions, but I can only answer so many questions. There's a lot of material on the blog, lots of different links. The blog page is my new page. And then also my podcasts. There's a podcast page on the website. I've interviewed lots of people over the past year. These are subjects that I'm interested in. It's not a formal interview, but I think you'll get a lot of information. And I have a newsletter that you can subscribe to. It is by mail, and there is a newsletter tab. And it is by subscription. It's not free, and it doesn't go by email. So there are sample newsletters there. If you want to read a few, you can. But newsletter is a way for me to write down in a coherent form some of the things I've stumbled into and then have a record of it. So people actually save my newsletters. They put them in a folder, and they save them year after year after year, which I find very flattering. But yeah, they're on the website. I also have, since we're getting into summer, sunscreen, mineral sunscreen, which is very safe and body friendly. Everyone needs to know that the commercial sunscreen, you go into a regular grocery store or drugstore and you buy sunscreen and you look at the back and there's a ton of unpronounceable stuff in it. That stuff is petrochemical in its base. It's using a lot of nanoparticles, and usually titanium oxide or titanium dioxide. None of this is good for you. And the best sunscreens have the fewest ingredients. And on my sun and skin page, There's a line of sunscreens that's excellent. And there's also a body wash that's excellent. No phthalates. And it has zinc oxide built into it. So you can use a little bit on areas that you are exposing a lot, like arms and face. That's how I would use it. And it floats the zinc into your skin and gives you a little bit of sunscreen protection that's built in. So those are my things, and those are the websites, Avatar Products. Maybe you'll link, David. It's a lonely haul, this alternate world of research and information, and sometimes we are by ourselves, and there is no one to tell about such and such thing that you just found. But you've been great, and I've gotten to know you, and I'm happy to be on your show anytime.